The next question is a statement or assertion that expresses a judgment or opinion is known as proposition. Now, I want you to briefly elaborate what proposition really means. Do not be too elaborate, don't take much time because I ain't got none.
A proposition is a statement or assertion that conveys a specific judgment or opinion. It's essentially the core idea or claim that can be true or false, like the cat is on the mat. It represents a content that can be discussed or evaluated.
Moving on to the next question. So, a conditional statement, the first clause of which expresses something contrary, that is the opposite to the fact. So, a conditional statement, the first clause of which expresses something contrary to the fact, is called counterfactual statement, right? So, give me exemplify this statement. Elaborate and exemplify this statement.
A counterfactual statement expresses a condition that is contrary to reality. For example, if I had known about the meeting, I would have attended. Here, the first clause, if I had known about the meeting, is contrary to the actual fact, implying that the speaker did not know about the meeting and, as a result, did not attend.
Can you provide me with more examples on the same topic?
Sure. Here are a few more examples. 1. If she had studied harder, she would have passed the exam. This implies she didn't study hard enough and didn't pass. 2. If we had left earlier, we would have caught the train. This suggests that they left late and missed the train. 3. If it had rained yesterday, the picnic would have been canceled. This indicates that it didn't rain and the picnic went ahead. Each of these examples shows a condition that is contrary to what actually happened.
Good, thank you. Now let's move on to the next question. So, words are deictic if their semantic meaning varies depending on time or place, but their denotational meaning is fixed. Both semantic meaning and denotational meaning are free. Both semantic meaning and denotational meaning vary depending on time or place. Their semantic meaning is fixed, but their denotational meaning varies depending on time and place. So the correct answer is that words are deictic if their semantic meaning is fixed, but their denotational meaning varies depending on time or place. Now, I have no idea what deictic words or deictic expressions mean and what this statement in reference to the deictic expressions mean. All I know about the deictic expression is that, a word which derives its meaning from the context in which it is happening. For example, person deixis, place deixis, and time deixis, temporal deixis.
You got the right idea. Deictic expressions, or deictic words, are those whose meaning depends on the context of the utterance. They are also known as indexicals. For example, pronouns like I, you, and he, or time and place words like now and here, are deictic because their meaning changes based on who is speaking, when, and where. So in the statement you mentioned, words are deictic if their semantic meaning is fixed, but their denotational meaning varies depending on time or place. It means that while the basic function of deictic words stays the same, their specific meaning can shift with the context. For instance, here always indicates the place where the speaker is, but here could mean different places depending on when and where it's used.
Moving on to the next question. Okay, so before moving on to the next question, can you briefly elaborate on how this could how this could vary? The statement which says that the semantic meaning is fixed, but the denotational meaning varies depending on context. So can you briefly exemplify different contexts where it varies?
Certainly. In deictic expressions, the semantic meaning refers to the fixed role or function of the word, while the denotational meaning is what it specifically refers to in a given context. For example, take the word here. The semantic meaning of here is always a location relative to the speaker. However, the denotational meaning changes based on context. If you say, I am here while at home, here refers to your home. If you say, I am here while at a friend's house, here refers to your friend's house. Similarly, now always refers to the present time relative to when the statement is made. But now could mean different times depending on when and where it's used.
Now, the next question, a semantic change with range of meanings decreased so that a word can be used appropriately only in fewer contexts than it could before be used uh, before the change. What is this called? So the given options are synecdoche, ellipsis, elevation, narrowing. So I think narrowing is the correct option. Now go ahead and explain what this statement means in a brief. Don't be too elaborate.
You're right, the correct option is narrowing. Narrowing refers to a semantic change where a word's meaning becomes more specific over time. For example, the word meat used to mean any kind of food, but now it specifically refers to the flesh of animals. So the word's range of meanings has decreased, and it is now used in fewer contexts.
All right, now, what is synecdoche? Can I want this to be conceptually clear. So I want you to exemplify and elaborate in detail what synecdoche is and exemplify, and not just one example, but many examples, like a lot of examples. So let's go ahead and do that. Synecdoche, one of the options mentioned in the same question. Explain that.
Sure, it seems like there might be a slight misunderstanding with the term synodox. You might be referring to synonyms, ellipsis, or something related to semantics. Let me clarify what I believe you're asking about. If you're talking about synonyms, these are words that have the same or nearly the same meaning as other words. For example, happy and joyful are synonyms because they convey similar emotions. Another example is fast and quick. If you meant ellipsis, this refers to the omission of words in a sentence that are understood from the. For instance, in the sentence, she can play the guitar and he can play the guitar too, the ellipsis indicates that the omitted part is understood. If you're looking for examples of semantic changes, like narrowing, broadening, or metaphor, please let me know.
I'm asking about synecdoche, Synecdoche, synecdoche.
I see. Synecdoche is a figure of speech where a part of something is used to refer to the whole, or vice versa. It's a way of using a specific detail to represent a larger concept. Here's how it works. 1. Part for whole. When a part of something is used to represent the whole, like calling a car wheels. Here, wheels represents the entire car. 2. Whole for part. When the whole is used to refer to a part, such as using America to refer to the United States as a whole, even though it's one country within a continent. 3. Container for content, referring to the contents by naming the container, like saying a glass when you mean the liquid inside it. 4. Material for object, naming the material something is made from, like calling a dish silver when it's made of silver. These examples show how synecdoche simplifies or emphasizes specific aspects of a major entity.
All right, so in the same way, explain for ellipsis. What is ellipsis? Zabari. I don't know what ellipsis is. How can I tell you? How could I possibly tell you? All right. So explain to me about ellipsis. What does ellipsis as a mechanism signify, or take care of?
Ellipsis is a mechanism that allows speakers to omit parts of a sentence because the omitted parts are understood from the context. It helps in making communication more efficient and less repetitive. Here's what it signifies. 1. Contextual understanding. It relies on the listener's ability to infer the missing parts based on the context. For example, in She Can Play the Guitar, and He Can Too, the full idea is play the guitar, but it's omitted because it's understood from the context. 2. Efficiency in communication. By removing repetitive or obvious elements, ellipsis makes sentences shorter and more direct. For instance, saying, I'm going to the store and you two omits are going, but the meaning is clear. 3. Clarity and brevity. It helps in avoiding redundancy and maintains clarity without repeating information. In I went to the park and Jane did too, went to the park is understood in the second clause. In summary, ellipsis streamlines communication by letting listeners fill in the gaps based on context, making conversations smoother and more efficient.
And what's elevation? One of the options mentioned in the same question, elevation. What does this signify in linguistic studies or languages?
In linguistic studies, elevation refers to a type of semantic change where a word's meaning becomes more positive or prestigious over time. Essentially, it involves a shift from a more neutral or negative sense to one that is more favorable or esteemed. For example, consider the word knight. Originally, it might have referred to a common soldier or servant, but over time, it came to represent a person of high rank or honor due to its association with chivalry and nobility. Another example is the word lord. Initially, it could simply denote a master or person in authority, but its usage has elevated to denote a person of significant prestige or nobility. In summary, elevation is about a word acquiring a more favorable or esteemed meaning than it originally had.
So elevation is synonyms with amelioration. Amelioration as in Lioration. Amelioration. This is a concept in linguistics, which talks about how a word which had a negative sense has now come to include the positive sense, or to explain something better and something good, and something of a higher value.
Yes, exactly. Elevation and amelioration. are synonyms in this context. Both terms refer to the process where a word's meaning shifts from something more neutral or negative to a more positive or esteemed sense. So amelioration or elevation involves a word gaining a more positive or higher value connotation over time. For instance, the word gentleman once simply meant a man of good birth, but it has come to signify a person of refined manners and high social standing, reflecting an elevation in meaning.
Now, since historical linguists are concerned with change in language or languages over time, historical linguistics is also called diachronic linguistics. Now, let's talk about the next question. The next question is sometimes several sound changes seem to be interrelated with more far reaching impact on the overall phonological system of the language. Such changes are called akin changes, interconnected changes, change shifts, or interrelated changes. So these are called change shifts. Now, can you elaborate more on what change shifts really are, and try to exemplify with a real life example of what explaining what what change shifts really are.
Change shifts, also known as sound shifts, occur when multiple related sound changes affect the language's phonological system in a way that creates a systematic pattern. These changes often interact and influence each other, leading to a broad and coherent shift in the phonological structure of the language. For example, the great vowel shift in English is a classic instance of change shifts. During the 15th to 18th centuries, the pronunciation of long vowels in English underwent significant changes. For instance, the vowel in bite shifted from a pronunciation similar to beat to the current pronunciation. This shift didn't occur in isolation, but was part of a broader pattern affecting all long vowels in English, leading to substantial changes in the language's sound system. These shifts typically impact many words and sounds, leading to noticeable changes in the phonological and sometimes orthographic systems of the language.
Now, the next question is the change in which s or s or z or z becomes ra or r, usually between vowels and glides. This is termed as rhotacism. Now, onosis became honoris. This is an example of rhotacism. So can you give more examples of rhotacism apart from the one that I just explained? And yeah, really, what goes behind this mechanism? What's the movement motivation behind this mechanism?
Rhotacism refers to the phonological change where a sound like s or s turns into an sound, often occurring between vowels or near glides. Apart from honoris becoming honoris, other examples include, in Latin, the word honos, honor, sometimes shifted to honor in its later forms, showing rhotacism. In some dialects of Spanish, s can become in certain positions, as in the transition from Old Spanish to Modern Spanish in words like causa, cause, where the s might shift towards an sound. The motivation behind rhotacism often involves ease of articulation. Sounds that are less natural to pronounce in certain contexts might shift to sounds that are easier to produce, leading to systematic phonological changes over time. This kind of sound change can also be influenced by dialectal variation or historical linguistic processes.
Now, what is pedagogy? One of the terms explained, mentioned in the same question. Pedagogy. What's that? Exemplify.
Pedagogy refers to a method of teaching or learning that is informal and often self-directed. It contrasts with formal pedagogy, which is structured and teacher-led. For example, Learning through online forums or peer groups where participants share knowledge and help each other out is a form of pedagogy. It involves learners taking the initiative to guide their own learning process, often through collaboration and shared experiences, rather than through traditional classroom settings.
Moving on to the next question, the law that embodies systematic correspondences between Germanic and the non Germanic languages, the results of regular sound change in Germanic. The answer is Grimm's law. Now, Wilhelm von Humboldt's law. What is that?
Wilhelm von Humboldt's law, often referred to in linguistic studies, is not a specific law like Grimm's law. Instead, Wilhelm von Humboldt was a pioneer in linguistic theory and is known for his ideas on language structure and its relation to thought. He proposed that language shapes thought, and that each language represents a unique worldview. Humboldt's work laid the groundwork for understanding the relationship between language, culture, and cognition.
Was it Wilhelm von Humboldt who classified, who contributed towards the classification of languages as in, agglutinative, isolating, analytic, agglutinative, inflectional, synthetic? Was it this person?
Yes, Wilhelm von Humboldt made significant contributions to the classification of languages. He didn't create the specific categories like agglutinative or isolating, but his work on language structure influenced later linguists who developed these classifications. Humboldt's ideas about language as a reflection of cultural and cognitive processes were foundational for understanding different types of linguistic systems.
So, what are the major works done by Wilhelm von Humboldt? Where did he belong to? In what years did he propose his contribution?
Wilhelm von Humboldt was a German philosopher, linguist, and government functionary who lived from 1870 to 1860. His major works include Über die Verschiedenheit des menschlichen Sprachbaues und ihren Einfluss auf die geistige Entwicklung des Menschengeschlechts, often translated as On the Diversity of Human Language Construction and its Influence on the Mental Development of Mankind. In this work, he explored the relationship between language and thought and laid the groundwork for what would later be known as linguistic relativity. He also studied the structure of various languages and developed ideas about how language reflects and shapes human cognition. Humboldt's contributions were influential in the development of modern linguistics and language philosophy.
Now, what about Grassmann's law? Was it proposed in the year 1881? And this explained the palta changing to pata. So law disappears from a sound. Was this the Grassmann's law?
Grassmann's law, proposed by the linguist Hermann Grassmann in 1861, deals with the phenomenon where a voiceless aspirated sound, like P or T, becomes a plain voiceless sound, like B or D, when it follows another voiceless aspirated sound in the same word. It's not about disappearance, but rather a change in the sound's quality. The example you're referring to, where P becomes B, isn't directly related to Grassmann's law.
So, which law was it? The example of which was that, Palta law changes to lingual cerebral retroflex. It was proposed in the year 1881, and it probably was indeed the Grassman's law. I don't know why you say that it's not the one that I'm explaining.
The example you're mentioning, where a sound changes to a retroflex, actually relates to a different sound law called Kashmiri Grassman's Law, or Bengali Grassman's Law. It deals with the specific changes in certain languages, particularly in the South Asian linguistic context. Grassman's Law in general applies to Indo-European languages, not specifically to those retroflex changes. The date and details you mentioned align more with this regional application.
Okay, moving on to the next question. In conversation, according to Grice, one tries to be truthful and does not give out uh, information that is false and that is not supported by evidence. So that falls under the maxim of quality, right? Briefly explain what all are included in the maxim of quality, maxim of quantity, maxim of relation, and maxim of manner. So, quality, yeah, do what I said.
Grice's maxims are part of his theory on conversational implicature, guiding how people typically communicate effectively. Maxim of quality: be truthful and do not provide information that is false or unsupported by evidence. Maxim of quantity: provide the right amount of information, neither too much nor too little. Maxim of relation: stay relevant to the topic of conversation and provide information that is pertinent. Maxim of manner: be clear and orderly in your communication, avoiding ambiguity and obscurity. These maxims help ensure that conversations are meaningful and efficient.
Now, the process whereby a speech community of a language changes to speaking another language, often a language perceived to be of higher status, is called a language shift. Certainly. Now, the next, a language systematically used to make communication possible between persons not sharing a native language. Not sharing a native language is called pidgin. I'm sorry, it's the lingua franca. I'm sorry. Pidgin is something else. That's the lingua franca. Lingua franca, when two people come together and, a language systematically used to make communication possible between persons not sharing a native language. That's lingua franca. Now, the next is a political movement advocating the recognition of.
It sounds like you're moving on to a new question. What would you like to discuss next?
The next question, a political movement advocating the recognition of Bangla language as an official language of East Bengal, currently Bangladesh, is an example of a language movement. The next, ethnomethodology as a new and distinctive approach to sociological analysis emerged with Harold Garfinkel. Now, yes, so go ahead and explain who this person is, what are his major contributions, any books written, what year was he publishing in those books into, and yeah, what are his major contributions regarding ethnomethodology, all of that.
Harold Garfinkel was a prominent American sociologist who founded ethnomethodology, a branch of sociology that studies how people make sense of their everyday lives. His major contributions include exploring how individuals use social norms and rules to interact and understand each other in daily situations. One of his seminal works is Studies in Ethnomethodology, published in 1967. In this book, Garfinkel outlines the principles of ethnomethodology and provides various case studies to illustrate how people use common sense knowledge to navigate social interactions. His work significantly influenced how sociologists think about the construction of social reality and the methods people use to maintain it.
Where does he belong to, Harold Garfinkel?
Harold Garfinkel was born in Newark, New Jersey, in the United States. He spent most of his academic career in the US, particularly at institutions like UCLA, where he conducted much of his influential research.
We'll see you soon. I don't know if the voice is coming or not.
Take care.
There is no voice. That means I've wasted my 32 minutes.